Most of us expect Zion Williamson to be a once-in-a-generation type talent. He obviously hasn't played a game yet, but once he gets back. And then you've got guys like Ja Morant, who looks like an exceptional point guard for the future. But it's not necessarily the top guys in this draft class, like RJ Barrett, Zion, Ja Morant. It's the draft class itself as a whole, with guys like Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn. And I do know that Kendrick Nunn was drafted last season, but because he's in the Rookie of the Year race for this season, I'm sort of putting him in this NBA draft class because he's going to be remembered as one of the 2019 rookies that obviously had the potential to win the Rookie of the Year award in this 2019-2020 season. But in addition, this class has guys like Eric Pascal, Brandon Clark, PJ Washington. It's the entire draft class in itself, and not just the top level talent that was obviously drafted in the top 5. Tyler Hero was picked quite late in the lottery, and obviously Kendrick Nunn went undrafted. And then you've got guys like Eric Pascal in the second round. We're still yet to see if Bol can play in the NBA and what he'll become. Matisse Thybulle, who's playing a crucial role for the Philadelphia 76ers on the defensive end. So this draft class not only has the talent like Zion, RJ, Ja Morant, but it also has those potential all-stars like PJ Washington, Cam Johnson, Cam Reddish, Rui Hachimura, Jackson Hayes if he develops for the Pelicans. And then the second round guys, Eric Pascal, Kendrick Nunn, who was undrafted, Bruno Fernando, who looks okay for the Atlanta Hawks for a second round pick. So, this draft class may not have the star level talent like the 2003 draft class with LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony, and Chris Bosh, or a 1984 draft class with MJ, Hakeem, John Stockton, Charles Barkley. But in terms of the entire draft class as a whole, I think it has the potential to be a very depth-heavy draft. But if you're sitting there expecting me to say that this 2019 draft class will have the star level talent like all the other draft classes on the list, then that is not happening because I don't think this is a star level heavy draft. I think this draft though has the most amount of depth of any other NBA draft of all time. The amount of potential all-stars I see is unreal, which in my opinion shows that the draft class overall is a better draft class than a draft class that just has incredible talent, in my opinion. I want to make this clear, and very, very clear. This obviously is a hypothetical, because obviously I cannot read into the future and I don't know how these players will end up being in the NBA. I don't mean the individual players, I mean the draft class as a whole. So that's what I wanted to make very clear. I'm going to try and predict, but obviously I don't know. But that is the reason why I'm making this video. Because how cool would it be if I made this video and then 5-10 years later I look back and I'm like, okay, that was a pretty cool prediction. I actually got it right. Or maybe I'll look back and I'll be like, well, that was a massive fail. I completely got this wrong. I don't know, but I honestly see from even the opening few months of this season that this draft class is something special. So we're going to look at the top draft classes in NBA history and we're going to compare them to this 2019 draft class, and I'm going to give my thoughts on both this year's draft class and the past NBA draft classes. We're looking at an article by Bleacher Report, and the article itself doesn't matter, but it's just to give you an idea of what draft classes we're looking at. So let's start off with the 1985 NBA draft class. The 1985 NBA draft class was actually controversial at the time. The whole Patrick Ewing going to New York incident with David Stern, the folding of the envelope, that was obviously a pretty big story. Looking back, it may have been rigged, who knows, but the actual draft class itself was actually really, really good. Guys like Patrick Ewing, Chris Mullin, Karl Malone, Joe Dumars, Terry Porter, they were all in this draft class. They had Sabonis, who was obviously one of the best talents outside of the NBA at the time, who ended up getting drafted. So when you look at this draft class, you have 5 guys that have made it to the Hall of Fame. Patrick Ewing, Chris Mullin, Karl Malone, Joe Dumars, and Sabonis. So obviously this draft class was stacked. In addition, it had guys like Xavier McDaniel, AC Green, Terry Porter, and Michael Adams, who have all been selected for at minimum 1 All-Star game. Obviously, there are 2 incredible players on this list that I think are above both of the other All-Stars. Patrick Ewing and Karl Malone, obviously an insane duo. Karl Malone is one of the greatest scorers of all time, one of the greatest players of all time. As a player, he was obviously incredible. Patrick Ewing, obviously one of the greatest players of all time as well. Chris Mullin and Joe Dumars, they're both small forward shooting guards who could shoot the lights out. So like the 2003 draft class, I don't know if there will be the level of talent like Ewing, Mullin, Karl Malone and Dumars in Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett, Ja Morant, etc. Because obviously it's very hard to predict. But I do think that Zion Williamson has the potential to be one of the greatest players of all time, and that is coming from honest opinion. In addition, I do think that Ja Morant and RJ Barrett could be multiple-time All-Stars, and I think for the 2019 NBA draft class, when looking at the depth, I think it's a better draft class overall than the 1985 NBA draft class, simply because of the depth. The amount of potential all-star talent that I see in the 2019 draft class, in my opinion, is better than the 1985 draft class. But obviously, that's up for debate. The 1981 NBA draft class. The 1981 NBA draft class was a weird one because it only featured one basketball player that was in the Hall of Fame. But just like the 2019 draft class, I think it had a lot of depth. It had a total of 9 NBA players that were selected to at least one All-Star game at minimum. And those players were Mark Aguirre, Buck Williams, obviously Isaiah Thomas, Steve Johnson, Tom Chambers, Rolando Blackman, Kelly Tripucka, who could get buckets, Larry Nance, obviously he can throw it down, and Danny Ainge, who was in the second round, and obviously we all know Danny Ainge is the GM of the Celtics at the moment. But this draft class, I think will be most similar to the 2019 draft class. I think we'll have one standout player. I think like Isaiah Thomas, that will be most likely Zion Williamson. Because of the amount of players that went on to be All-Stars, I think this draft class will be most similar to the 2019 draft class, with someone who has the potential to be a Hall of Fame talent, plus many All-Stars. It's going to be interesting though. At number 3, the 2003 draft class. The 2003 draft class, we touched on it before, but this draft class obviously was a really good draft class. It had a once-in-a-generation player in LeBron James, it had Melo, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, and then it had other all-star players like Chris Kaman, David West, Josh Howard, Mo Williams, Kyle Korver. So obviously this draft class was a very good draft class. It even featured guys that went on to be just good players in the league. Guys like Kirk Heinrich, Boris Diaw, Kendrick Perkins, Steve Blake, Matt Bonner, who was able to play a role for the Spurs. So this obviously was an amazing draft class. We all know the 2003 draft class is amazing. And even without LeBron James, it will still be one of the greatest of all time. With LeBron James, it just takes it to another level. Once again, the 2003 draft class had at least 9 All-Star players, and they also had 4 other guys that we're going to see in the Hall of Fame: LeBron, Melo, Bosh, and Wade. So can the 2019 draft class compare? Well, it's going to be tough to compare to this draft class. We need a once-in-a-generation player in Zion Williamson to compare up with LeBron, and then we're going to need guys like Ja Morant, RJ Barrett, and whoever else to step up with Carmelo, Bosh, Wade. That's going to be interesting, and it's going to be hard to compare. But I do think that overall, if Chris Kaman, David West, Josh Howard, Mo Williams, and Kyle Korver can become an All-Star, I think we can definitely see other players in this 2019 draft class that could potentially become All-Star players as well, if it's just for at least one season. If Kyle Korver can make an All-Star appearance for one season, who was in the second round, pick 51, then I don't put it past a guy like Kendrick Nunn or Tyler Hero, or a guy that's picked later in the draft class, maybe a guy like Brandon Clark, to make at least one All-Star appearance. So I think it can compare. But in terms of the guys that will go on to be Hall of Fame and once-in-a-generation type talents, like LeBron, Wade, Bosh, and Melo, that's where we're going to find some more trouble for the 2019 draft class. Number 2, the 1984 NBA draft class. It's ranked second on this list, and you've got guys like Hakeem Olajuwon, who was arguably top 5 in the greatest centers of all time. You've got MJ, who's no doubt the greatest shooting guard of all time, and in most people's opinion, the greatest player of all time. You've got Charles Barkley, who obviously is one of the greatest power forwards of all time. John Stockton, who's one of the greatest point guards of all time. But then it kind of decreases from there. You've only got 3 other players that went on to be All-Stars, and that was Alvin Robinson, Otis Thorpe, and Kevin Willis. So in terms of the impact on star-level talent alone, this is comparable to the 2003 draft class. Because you've got Hakeem, Jordan, Charles Barkley, and John Stockton, you can compare that to LeBron, Wade, Melo, and Bosh, although you would have to rank this 1984 draft class as the better draft class if you're looking at star-level talent. Hakeem won an MVP, Barkley won an MVP, Jordan obviously was the greatest player of all time and won multiple MVPs, and obviously John Stockton never won an MVP but was one of the greatest point guards of all time. LeBron and Jordan, I guess, cancel each other out, but I would take Jordan. And then you've got Hakeem Olajuwon, who I would rank higher than Dwayne Wade in my opinion, Charles Barkley, who I would rate higher than Chris Bosh, and John Stockton, who I would rate higher than Carmelo Anthony. So the draft class in itself is a much better draft class, even though it had less All-Stars, just based on star level talent. is obviously better than the 2003 draft class, but if the 2019 draft class can get more all-star level talents, maybe 10 to 15 all-stars, the 2019 draft class could end up being better. Because let's be honest here, would you rather have a more depth draft class, which meant that you had 15 potential all-stars, plus maybe a guy that could transcend the game like Zion Williamson? Or would you rather have 4 amazing players, but only 6 all-stars, including the 4 amazing players? I'm not sure. I think I would rather have multiple all-stars. That could make the 2019 draft class a better draft class, even if they didn't have the amazing star level talent like this 1984 draft class had, or the 2003 draft class for that matter as well. Because it's not about the individual player, it is about the draft class itself. And at number 1, the 1996 NBA draft class. The 1996 NBA draft class has been ranked the greatest draft class of all time. You've got guys like Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, Stephon Marbury, Ray Allen, Peja Stojakovic, Steve Nash, Jermaine O'Neal. I could keep going on and on and on. The 1996 draft class had Ben Wallace, who went undrafted and ended up being one of the greatest defensive centers the game has ever seen, even at his smaller frame of 6'9". He's one of my favorite players of all time, and the man was an absolute beast. Which leaves this draft class with Allen Iverson, Ray Allen, Steve Nash, Kobe Bryant, and Ben Wallace, who will all enter the Basketball Hall of Fame. And then you've got guys like Stephon Marbury, who could potentially do it, Peja Stojakovic, who could potentially do it as well. But when looking at the entire draft class overall, including all the guys that have made it and will eventually make it, like Kobe, into the Hall of Fame, you've got Allen Iverson, Shareef Abdul-Rahim, Stephon Marbury, Ray Allen, Anthony Walker, Kobe Bryant, Peja Stojakovic, Steve Nash, Jermaine O'Neal, Zydrunas Ilgauskas, and Ben Wallace, which is 11 players that have all made it to at least one All-Star appearance. 11 players, including 4 to 5 guys that will potentially make it to the Hall of Fame. There's a reason why this draft class is ranked the greatest draft class of all time. You've got the star level talent that have transcended the game in Kobe, Steve Nash, Allen Iverson, and Ray Allen. And then you've also got your all-star players in Stephon Marbury, Anthony Walker, Peja Stojakovic. So will the 2019 draft class be able to live up to this draft class? Well, that's going to be interesting to see. This may be the only draft class that I see that could potentially beat out the 2019 draft class in terms of the depth of potential all-stars. But you never know. If the 2019 draft class, like I said before, can get at least 15 potentially one-time all-stars, then we're going to see which draft class is better. But let me know what you think. Do you think this 2019 draft class could be one of the greatest draft classes of all time? Do you think it could be the greatest draft class of all time? I really want to know what you guys think down below in the comment section.